Hey there, welcome to episode 91 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this episode at the lovely pre-sunrise hour of 5:19 in the morning. At least I don't see the sun coming up yet. On this Thursday, August 21st, 2025. Thursday is the usual day that we publish each episode of FFS Talk each week. So perfect timing. Today's title and topic, blockchain, Web3, Metaverse, AI. Oh my. Oh my. I can't really do George Takei. That's Sulu on Star Trek. He does it. That's his signature phrase. Oh my. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, the entire notion is for this to be a conversation about what works, what does not work, and what we might do about it. So ideally, there would be a guest or two. There would be a conversation, a debate, even an argument, who knows. So in lieu of that, each episode, this being episode 91, each episode has been a solo audio essay, wherein I posit some notions, some viewpoints on what works and what doesn't, and what we might do about it, in hopes that these will seed future conversations. Wouldn't that be cool? I will add a little brief announcement. I am in the midst of putting up some websites for each of my audio programs. As I mentioned yesterday in Quaggling Sand, if you happen to listen to that as well, the server's ready. I just have to actually create some HTML. That's my least favorite part, I have to be honest. So I will try to get both Quaggling Sand and FFS Talk at least a one-page starting point published. Everything else works. The secure socket layer, HTTPS server with the keys from the certificates from Let's Encrypt, all that stuff. FFS, it works. So look for that there, and I'll get to that in the link section, but just want to put that here up front. But if you've never heard the FFS Talk audio program, that's the deal. And what does FFS mean anyway? Well, it's based on an Irish expression. I heard it many times when I was in Ireland, in and around Dublin, as part of my workaday pursuits a few years ago. If you don't know what that means, you should get to know some Irish people. And on that note, I will ask that you seek out the episode description wherever it is you found this audio program. You may have found it on YouTube. You may have found it on Apple Podcasts. You may have found it on Amazon Podcasts or music and podcasts or whatever that is. There maybe it's on iHeartRadio, maybe it's in the podcast index, maybe it's on Spotify. It could be in any number of places, and maybe you'll find it on the FFS Talk website one of these days. Wherever that is, there are some show notes which contain a summary, which I'll read to you, including attribution for an image I've used in the cover art for today's episode. We'll cover the links really quickly. There is one link for today's episode, and then we'll get through the show so we can get on with our days. So let us begin. The show notes, today's summary: the hype cycle is real, and we seem to be experiencing them in overlapping fashion, faster and faster, like Tarzan passing from vine to vine through modernity. Gartner Hype Curve cover art image by Olga Tarkovsky. I think I'm saying that right, hopefully. It is their own work. It is Creative Commons by, what is essay? It's, what does essay stand for? I can't remember. And there's a link to what that means. No, there's a link to the actual, what is that a link to? Anyway, essay, what is essay? Now I got to check because it's been too long since I've thought about that. CC, essay, share alike. There you go. Someone modifies the work. Oh, they must share it. Okay, so I didn't modify. Well, I literally removed the background white so it was transparent, but that is an immaterial change. So the image is available. I have a link to the Wikipedia page from which it came, so I think we're good. Attribution, share alike. So Creative Commons attribution, that's the by, and then essay, share alike 3.0 with a link to Wikimedia. The links for today's episode. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, still a good place to find links to all of my audio programming profile pages on Spotify, for example, which is where you'll find all the episodes that are now available on Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music Podcasts and Spotify, of course, and maybe some other places. And you will find links to the appropriate YouTube channels where the podcast audio is uploaded automatically from the RSS feeds. There will be more along the lines of YouTube usage in the near term, so stay tuned. And as I've mentioned, there will be a website eventually, and a link to that will also appear on buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, so you can check that out. Hint, it will be ffstalk.com, no spaces. Buy Me an Update is still published on buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts, but it is also shortly after available in the same places as everything else. So there's a link to those other places as well. So if you do happen to check out the Buy Me a Coffee platform in general, and if you want to follow me on there, great. And you can listen to the Monday morning brief recap on the topics of the previous week's audio programming and any news and announcements upcoming. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts for that. Coffee Solo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo/posts. Coffee Solo is just me, no schedule, no particular topic constraints, just whenever, talking about whatever for however long, just me. Coffee Solo used to be published exclusively on Ko-fi.com, and it's still published there first. And then it appears just like Buy Me an Update everywhere else that all my other programming appears. So check that out. I try to talk about random things, stuff going on, news. I don't avoid political topics or other such things. So no pub rules on Coffee Solo, for better or worse. And that is a precursor to that other project that will be coming along soon, hopefully. Finally, the Gartner Hype Cycle is for today's episode. That is a Wikipedia page, of course, and it does have one of the image on the page is the one I used in the cover art today. The hype curve is actually really interesting, and if you actually look at it, and then you look at how technology in particular, but it applies to other things as well, but definitely to technology in general, you will find you have seen this behavior at every turn. It's just how wide each of the phases are and how fast these things are coming at us. And I will posit that they are coming at us faster, and that the bands, the phases that you can see in the image, and if you visit the image on Wikipedia, you'll be able to actually zoom in on it. So I would recommend that. It's kind of a third or half the way down the page on the right, if you do check that out. So yeah, I think everything's compressed, and I think that's not good. So now on with the show. They always say that if you don't pay for something, then you're the product. I will say that the hype is the product at this point. And you, and me. I think we covered a hype situation previously. I know I've actually used a different hype curve somewhere. I didn't even look for where, because we're talking about it today. So much the better. And I know I have spoken about this before in general, explicitly, but the AI headlines, the AI part, the AI headlines for last week or two, and this week to some extent, are a stark reminder how important that hype curve can be in the face of new technology, which many are finding indistinguishable from magic. As the saying goes, have you ever had some experience? Maybe it was seeing a movie or a canyon or a sunset, tasting some ethnic dish in a new restaurant, hearing the new album from a band you have always enjoyed, or any of a myriad of other possibilities. And then try to impart that experience to someone else who has no context, no experience with this. You're hyping your experience, and then you will find out with this other person if your hype was spot on or maybe a little bit overdone. What if the person you are sharing your story with, buys the hype up front, maybe makes some fairly important decisions based on believing you, and only later, maybe sooner, but maybe much later, they find out, ouch, that hype actually was hype and nothing more. Now what? It might cost money, it might cost more than that. Or maybe they just won't believe you next time. The hype curve, does have some meaning. If we look way back, we will find a lot of examples of this hype curve actually bearing fruit, so to speak, where the time frame may vary, but the thing that got a ton of attention eventually found its audience. It reached that plateau of, what was it? The plateau of utility? No, it's the plateau of The plateau of productivity. There you go. Utility, same thing. When it becomes useful for the masses and it becomes appealing and attractive and so on. The time frame may vary, but the thing gets a ton of attention, finds its audience, its applications, and its utility out in the world. It just took some time. So time passes. Eventually it figures out there's some pivoting and so on. You remember fire way back when? Written language caught on eventually. Crossing oceans, that took a while, but it's probably worthwhile. Flying aircraft, that's crazy, especially if they had square windows. That was a bit of a problem. And all sorts of crazy ideas that were exciting and scary, probably disappointing and too dangerous, and then mainstream later, when the kinks got worked out, or when there was some pivoting, like I said, or just, it got figured out. It became, maybe the timing was wrong and then it became right. How about space? The final frontier. That had a real hype curve, and then an audience hype curve with all sorts of consumer space excitement leading up to the moon landing. And what I'm saying is that there were commercial and technological interests. So the hype curve that was aimed at military applications and commercial applications was slightly different than consumer interest in, for example, the moon landing, which was pretty intense right up until the Eagle has landed, and a couple of days after that, they splashed down, and then, can't be bothered. And then there was that malaise I just referred to, and then the realization that Tang and Velcro were pretty cool, not to mention weather and communication satellites. So the commercial side, the hype curve that was aligned with commercial interest and adoption, and then productization was a little bit off from the direct energy levels and investment of attention from the general population in space travel itself. So kind of, when I was thinking about that, I thought that was curious. Some things have a bit of a weird curve. Nuclear weapons, for example, if we can just jump right in that. A little weird, but here in Vegas, for example, so near a nuclear test site, it used to be called the NS Tech, and I think it's now called the NNSS. I can't remember what that stands for. Still has atomic liquors today. We have that here in Vegas. They used to allegedly sit on the roof of the place and watch the glow of the atomic test site to the north. There were all manner of nuclear tourist attractions back then, and we still have the Atomic Museum near the UNLV campus. I think they even have some Area 51 stuff for alien spaceships. I think it's a hype, a different kind of hype. The front part of that curve was nuts for nuclear weapons, but a war ended. It was time to get back to normal and celebrate nukes, I guess. The curve has taken a turn or two since those times. Thank you, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima, etc. Not to mention Yucca Mountain here in Vegas, where they want to put the nuclear waste, which is probably not as dangerous as people think. But anyway, I'm not a physicist. What do I know? The slow grow stuff does work, though, eventually. I mean, the stuff that takes a while to percolate. The hype curve has no specific time interval. Things percolate. Hey, I did use that word. As they do. And for a time, these big innovations would come along. People would get the hype. Things would die down. And eventually, whatever it was would get sorted into usable products, valuable services, basically things that made sense. So early adopters, they jump on stuff, and then it's, this doesn't work. So it all made sense eventually, sort of. It isn't perfect, but things have been shaking out on reasonable timescales for decades, right? So when things first come out, they're cool, and maybe not. I don't know. It's remember that thing from last year? It's much better now, or something in that sort of time frame. Could be years, probably not decades, probably not minutes. I have told my own stories about my internet journey. Most recently on my Quaggling Sand audio program, I spoke of the VAX. That was the title of the episode, the VAX, that we had in college, HMC VAX, a Digital Equipment Corporation computer. My first exposure to what was becoming the internet, this was 1989, and my journey through emailing and online chats and reading news and getting information from said internet. The internet was going to change the world. Do you remember when it really started to catch on? I was working at Netscape in 1996, and even then it took a while. Maybe Web 2.0 was a tipping point. Mobile internet was a positive. Mobile apps, fully functional mobile web browsing, streaming. Are these game changers or incremental improvements along that line of the long tail of that hype curve? How about electric cars? These have taken a very, very long time. And it was, and it is arguable where we are on the hype curve for those. It seems people are still in the valley, a lot of people. Some people just will not drive an electric car. Some people have no interest. Others are farther along to the right and have moved to the plateau of productivity with maybe they're on their second or third electric car. There is a fossil fuel agenda and issues to contend with there and more. Battery life, the fact that lithium ion batteries tend to not behave well when exposed to air. It's a tough call, but the technology has come along a long way since the old EV1, the General Motors EV1. Remember those? We had several of those running around Silicon Valley back in the day, back when they were cruising around silently, and then they all got recaptured and destroyed, if the rumors are true. What about fast and faster, though? The thing that gets tricky about new stuff that jumps into a hype curve, like sprinting into it, it can get a little bit confusing if everybody is piling on and moving it faster than it really should be moving through its various phases. We could look at self-driving cars as an example of this, where the hype around the technology and the strong desire to productize and place these into service at scale in as many places as possible has not been free of actual tragedy. There are some real game changers going on, like AI, of course, today, where the research and development phase of the pre-technology, if you will, has been going on for literally for decades. But the technology itself, the GPUs to perform the multiply and accumulate operations, that's what GPUs are really good at, with astronomical performance levels only dreamed of those decades ago. So at long last, the promise of artificial intelligence is here. Or is it? We are already seeing the likes of even Sam Altman himself of OpenAI pulling back a bit, talking about AI bubbles, downplaying expectations. GPT-5 recently launched, and it wasn't everything that people wanted it to be. Maybe they're getting a little bit ahead of themselves on the curve, or maybe the curve is dipping down. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think we're actually not in the plateau of productivity at all. I think we're quite far from that. And other news is reporting similar findings in pilot programs deploying AI to replace people and so on and so on and so on. So they're pulling back. The pilot programs, like I said, showing that replacing humans with AI may not be all it's cracked up to be. We probably knew that when we really thought about it. Not everything is, maybe some things are Terminator and HAL 9000. It's hard to say. Somewhere in the middle there, we have the likes of blockchain, which is an interesting thing that does tackle a few actual interesting problems, but which has been swept up into what is now almost entirely deregulated cryptocurrency, complete with presidential meme coins of all things. This is insanity, by the way. That's a little political commentary. I'll leave that there. The entire Web3 notion, remember that, which included a lot of blockchain, is where is Web3? I don't even know. I think we hear about it every once in a while, but maybe it's in the Metaverse. Maybe you go to the Metaverse and you can learn about Web3, which, aside from the prompting a name change for the corporation that owns Facebook, now part of Meta, appears to be a technology of the future, some distant future, perhaps. But all of these things and more get tons and tons of hype. They're going to be the next thing. How many YouTube videos were created? How many meetups and events and conferences and who knows what else? And they're still ongoing. And I'm not going to say tons and tons of people, maybe half a ton. So what does work? But first, let's talk about what does not. What does work is that technology that evolves and emerges, and it has time to percolate and to pivot a little bit during development and stuff. But we'll get to that in a second. What does not work, as it turns out? That's what I meant. It would appear that compressing the time between the technology trigger, so if you're looking at that graph, the plot of the hype curve, right, like way over on the left, is the technology trigger, the thing that comes onto the scene the notion. And then there's some R&D, some research and development. And then the plateau of productivity at the end, where the shiny new tech thing is integrated into the economy, society, wherever it lands and catches on. And it's not an easy thing to accomplish, to compress those, to push them together. We're not in what was the movie? They always they fold the paper and they put the pencil through it to demonstrate how bending space works. Dark Deep Horizon, something like that. Scary movie. Not really scary, but you know what I mean. Gross. So I would go a bit further and suggest that when the time is compressed, when the irrationality of early adoption by people who kind of know what they're getting themselves into, and maybe they know what they're getting themselves into, what's going to happen, what to expect. Oh, this might not work. Never buy version 1 unless you know what you're doing, so on and so on, is left in the dust. Like, oh, remember we used to wait for that? So that more people will jump on board. How many people lost money? Maybe a lot of money. And I mean real money, actual, money that people consider real money, with the NFT craze, non-fungible tokens. How many have been taken in on a crypto rug pull, especially those meme coins? Look out. How many have suffered losses thanks to self-driving vehicle crashes gone wrong, and so on? And, obviously if you've suffered yourself, or if someone has not walked away from a self-driving vehicle crash or has suffered grave injuries, I'm sorry to hear that. And this is something that people in boardrooms are probably not thinking about, which I believe is horrible, and not a fan, not a supporter. I think it's a bad thing. So the so-called trough of disillusionment, and these again appear in the image of the Wikipedia article in the link section and in the cover art, and which I have attributed to its creator. But it's actually pretty important. That trough of disillusionment, that's the time where the failed variants can fall away as they run out of money. And the winning propositions, one or more that seem to catch on, can pivot a bit, determining what actually works and how to make that part that actually work even better, so that the rest of the market will lean in to learn more. Like, oh yeah, okay, that's more of what I was hoping this new thingy would be. Okay, maybe now I'll buy one. I'm just a normal adopter, not an early adopter. And the early adopters are like, oh, I got version 1. I can sell it on eBay or whatever. The law of unintended consequences also needs time to simmer a bit, to have this new shiny thing, whatever it is, steep a bit to see what color the tea turns. It might turn black. It might turn red. That's no good. What does any of that mean? Who knows? I'm mixing metaphors like mad, but some of the examples I just gave for some of these are trendy things that we may have been, and the problems that I've mentioned may have been avoided or anticipated and better understood, at least if there was some time to ponder what might go wrong. What really happens when you have a self-driving vehicle that might receive a software update. So the last time you drove it and the next time you drive it, there's been a change that you may not even be aware of. It may have just happened on its own. And then what? What even happens in these circumstances? Do people understand the things that they are handing their safety and potentially more on a daily basis, with fingers crossed and caution thrown to the wind? So I've just given these examples, and I think they could have been better understood. And I wish at this point, maybe I'm showing my age a little bit. I wish that people would spend a little bit more time pondering. Instead, we are all in the dubious position to be beta testers, sometimes by choice, other times by chance. I don't know if everybody knows that they're testing. Hey, I guess I'm testing out this new algorithm in my self-driving vehicle. I hope it works. So what do we do about this? What do we do about this? I think some of these things work, as I've intimated here. I think the things that don't work are not working worse, and they're not working faster, if that makes sense. So we're compressing the time to failure, but I don't think it's being dealt with appropriately. I think everybody's just dumping more and more money into the promise. And there may be an AI bubble, who knows, but it's already costing a tremendous amount of money, electricity, resources, possibly costing people jobs. There's already advice being given not to enter computer science fields. Oh, AI is going to take your jobs anyway. Well, that's going to inject a little bit of a gap. Fun fact, if I can interrupt my story here. When I started working at Apple, it was in 1993. Now, some of you may remember there was a recession. So when I graduated, it was 2 years. 2 years? Yeah, it was 2 years before I graduated from college. There was some challenges. So 93. So 91, there were some real challenges about getting jobs. And so a lot of students decided to go to grad school or maybe do something else. So when I started working at Apple in 1993, the next youngest or the person immediately older than me was 4 years older than me. So there was a gap of hiring for a time when there were just fewer people finishing college and going into the tech fields and so on in Silicon Valley. That didn't last too long, obviously, but I will be curious to see what happens if there is a pause, not to mention some of the other stuff going on with universities and whatnot, but if there is indeed a pause where people feel, instead of getting formal training, actually learning some theory and understanding how to understand and so on, I'll let AI do my homework and then we'll take it from there. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 5 years. Will there be a 5-year dip? And if you ever heard Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, talk about how there are there are more programmers in their first 5 years than there's always a growing number of entry-level, junior-level coders. So there's always a growing population of people who will eventually become senior coders. So that's not going to be true, I think, for a little while. It depends on how this unfolds. Anyway, what can we do about this? So luckily there are skeptics. I count myself as one of these, one of them. I don't know. For just about everything I have mentioned today, I was never a Bitcoin holder, unless I received some from a promotion or something, but I never purchased any cryptocurrency. I have never been involved in anything Web3-ish. I never got involved with NFTs. I don't have a self-driving vehicle. I think they're insane at this point. Yeah. So after the blockchain became more popular than it should be, I basically said, wait a minute. And I will say that the blockchain and cryptocurrencies became a hallway conversation when I was working at Jawbone. So this was in what was that? 2010, give or take, something like that. Somewhere in there. I had an opportunity to see some of the emerging of the internets, in fact, while I was working at Netscape, and I could see what was happening. I could see the development, the integration of some of the older notions, the fact that the Netscape web browser could read news and display images from UU encoded posts and eventually MIME encoded. It could do email, and it was basically, some of you may remember, it had a Gopher protocol parser in there, and it could actually interact with a lot of the old school stuff, which has since kind of fallen away. I think it has evolved over time into what is still an unhealthy thing today. It's evolved in an unhealthy way, to be sure, but at least it has done so over a longer time horizon. The internet in something close to its current form, and I mean the underlying connectivity. Yes, DNS has gone through some changes, and some of those protocols are a little bit older and they're not really around, although they probably are in some of the weirder corners. There have been some upgrades to the way secure connections are handled. So there's been a lot of evolution, but the internet as it exists today is more than 30 years old. And before that, the ARPANET and BitNet and all these other things were coming together. So it's really even older than that. So maybe a bit longer than 30. Where AI in the form we are experiencing it right now has been around for 5 years? Maybe 5 days at this point. Stuff is coming out so quickly. So depending on how you take your measurements, it might be 5 minutes. Yeah, little typo. Chances are tech was already moving faster than 99% of the consumer marketplace could properly keep up with. That's probably a low estimate. The people who reuse passwords are not going to take the time to understand privacy concerns around telling their favorite AI chat client or AI love interest their innermost thoughts and secrets. And let us not forget the children And I mean, no, I mean, really, this could be far worse a problem than self-esteem issues already debated around youth using their phones at school and all of the rest of the days as well. I have some questions about removing phones from use. I think students should be taught to use their phones. The digital technologies that are in everybody's pockets should be integrated into education, not locked in bags. That's just my opinion. But I think it's something to take serious looks at. And as AI comes on the scene, even more so. We are going to need a lot of education around the implications of our cutting edge tech as it is deployed upon us. I mean, it is kind of dumped on us, I think. And regulation from a responsible government. Holding our collective breath for any of these may not be possible, but we can try. Quite possibly, this will all require each of us to adopt the old notion of rugged individualism, a term coined by Herbert Hoover, who also famously signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, signed that into law in 1930, and in a completely unrelated turn of events, had nothing to do with that. The Great Depression commenced shortly after, so rugged individualism, definitely something to ponder. I have to admit, I am not overly optimistic about how wealth and impatience will drive technology down upon us to try out in the interest of, well, it leads to profit for some and detriment for others. And that's all I know for sure. But I think the rate at which things are being tried out on us in the name of profit and ego should raise concern, is cause for consternation even. But that's where I'll leave it for today. Maybe you have some thoughts on that. Like I said, one of these days I'll have guests on to talk about any of the topics that have appeared in the last 91 episodes, or maybe something else. Who knows? The episode count continues to grow, so there's probably something you want to talk about. Maybe you have an opinion, thoughts, ideas. We'll find out. I'll look for the website. I'm going to work on those today. I should have finished the Quaggling Sand one yesterday, but I literally have no idea what I want it to look like, so that dumbly slowed me down. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Do have good days and be careful with the latest in technologies. It's probably out to make someone else money. Take care now. Bye-bye.